Hello, I'm Askar Sherlief and you're watching the news from Kazakhstan. On Wednesday, Stan KZ Portal film crew was detained in the Mangistau region. Law enforcement agencies explained the arrest of journalists by the request of Zhanaozen residents. Supposedly, the striking oilfield workers are tired of the media attention.
Stan KZ information video portal reporting crew was arrested in Aktau on Wednesday. Reporters Tatiana Kovalyova, Azamat Yezbergen and cameraman Tokmoldak Husainov planned to cover the strike of oilfield workers in Zhanaozen. The crew was taken to the Aktau City Police Department to supposedly establish the identities of the arrested. The situation was not cleared even after the meeting with Colonel Amangildi Dosakhanov, the Internal Affairs Department head. Stan office managed to contact the head of the Mangistau Regional Internal Affairs Department. He said in a phone conversation that he has no control over the situation.
I'm in the center of Zhanaozen now at the bus terminal with oilfield workers, so I have no idea what is going on there.
The arrested reporter said their detention was explained by the procedure to identify all journalists arriving to the region. Supposedly, the Internal Affairs Department received a letter from Zhanaozen residents, who asked the police to protect them from the reporters.
Supposedly, the oilmen are already tired of the strike and journalists just worsen the situation with inaccurate information. Thus, oilfield workers ask to protect them from journalists, and that is why they do not let us in Zhanaozen.
After 30 minutes of talks with the head of Aktau Internal Affairs Department Dosakhanov, reporters were released without any apology. However, the group still could not reach Zhanaozen. The highway Aktau-Zhanaozen was blocked by a road hooligan, whose car created a dangerous situation. Stan crew and reporter of the newspaper Respublika had to make another unplanned stop and call the traffic police.
Almost immediately after it became known about the obstacles faced by journalists in the Mangistau region, active internet users expressed their attitude towards the accident, which caused an unusually quick response of the police and in general to the situation in the socially unstable region.
This is a total mess. Those who ordered and executed the arrest of journalists must be called to administrative and, in case of a repeat, to criminal responsibility for the illegal interference in the legitimate fulfillment of their duties. Journalists must be protected by the law from any abuse of power. The agonizing and senile regime does idiotic things one after the other. The OSCE and Reporters Without Borders must be informed about this incident. The victim, likely of the police orientation, was in civilian clothes and actively demanded to wait for the arrival of traffic police officers whom he already called. Who do you think deals with this kind of car accidents? The officer had the rank of a colonel, and this is 10 kilometers away from the city, in the industrial zone, in the area of the Mangistau Nuclear Energy Enterprise and Kazazot plant. In this particular case, it is the local authorities who fear the publicity of their actions. It is possible to judge how smart the authorities are by their actions. On the other hand, they could feel very confident and unpunishable and do not fear the publicity of their stupidity. Everyone understands that only those who bought a position work there, and they know only one thing: the richest person is the strongest and has the power. So they serve to those who have more power and are richer.
The attitude of the authorities towards the independent media in Kazakhstan was demonstrated by President's advisor, who said the newspaper Respublika had no chance of defending its position in a court. The publication has filed a lawsuit against the government, President's administration, Attorney General, Competition Protection Agency, and over 100 printing houses in Almaty.
For the first time in Kazakhstan's history, an independent newspaper is suing the government, President's administration, General Prosecutor's Office, and the Competition Protection Agency. For already 6 months, the newspapers Golos Respubliki and Maya Respublika had to be printed using a risograph.
In addition to the aforementioned authorities, we wanted to sue all printing houses of the country, but then we saw that the number of these defendants was too high in Almaty alone.
Printing houses that agreed to print Respublika fall under the press of inspection agencies. The publication believes the government launched a discriminatory campaign against it. Journalists sent out requests looking for those who imposed the printing moratorium. It is interesting that Prime Minister Masimov and Mr. Musin kept modest silence. They did not react in any way. President's advisor Yermohamed Ertesbayev believes the authorities have nothing to do with it. The newspaper publishes false information, and that is the reason why nobody wants to print it. How do you estimate the chances of Respublika to win the case?
Considering the real situation in our country, I think they have no chances at all.
The real situation in the country is obvious, says the guest of the press conference Elena Malygina. Not only the freedom of speech, but also the freedom of business is nowhere to be found in Kazakhstan. It is like a race to see who will outsmart whom. The newspaper tries to find ways to be published, and those who do not like it are coming up with the idea of how to prevent it. The action was already filed to the Economic Court in Almaty. Now Respublika staff is waiting for an explanation on what terms pretty houses can publish an independent newspaper and why the authorities are inactive when it comes to dealing with the freedom of speech.
The activists of the non-registered party Alga believe that everyone should know about Mukhtar Ablyazov's discrediting information about the president's son-in-law, Timur Kulibayev. On Wednesday, party members took the bankers' letters to the pro-governmental and independent television stations.
The visits to the offices of national TV channels began with a force majeure. The Kabar agency security attempted to prohibit the filming. After some negotiating, they called office representatives. Activists of the non-registered party Alga were met by the staff member of the Information Program Department, who promised them to pass Mukhtar Ablyazov's letters to the deputy chairman of the news agency. The political organization activists brought envelopes with appeals to 7 outlets, including Channel 7, Kazakhstan radio station, Mir TV and radio company, Astana, 31st Channel and KTK. Alga members hope that journalists will pass the information to the masses. They should primarily address these issues to the MPs and find out their reaction to the statements of Ablyazov, since they are the mass media.
It looks like Kazakh authorities do not want the public to even discuss the interview Mukhtar Ablyazov gave to K+ channel. Moderators of several popular websites and forums suppressed the attempts of users to raise the burning topic. Ablyazov talked about the illegal activities of the president's son-in-law Timur Kulibayev, accusing him in raiding and pocketing state assets. The public reaction followed immediately, although it is not clear whether Kulibayev will be prosecuted, since even mentioning his name in Kaznet is verboten.
No access, no problem, decided moderators of several Kazakh websites whose forums featured links leading to Mukhtar Ablyazov's interview to K+. Public interest to the subject is clear, as the former head of BTA Bank released documents which many believe can prove that Timur Kulibayev took bribes, embezzled public funds and was engaged in raiding, all while holding a state position. In the last interview, Ablyazov said he might be under the threat of an assassination commissioned by Kulibayev. This information led to some heated debate on the forums of Zona KZ and Center Tяжести. However, local moderators immediately began to edit the posts.
We also have video on the site. Perhaps the quality is not as good as yours, but we still do not want any competition here. So, if an issue is actively discussed, you simply prefer to block it? It depends on the issue. If it is really interesting, we can leave it.
Could this be any more interesting? Ablyazov said that Timur Kulibayev and his partners have stolen more than $20 billion, which is the amount comparable to the size of the National Fund of Kazakhstan. The scheme of the cash flow, contracts and agreements all are presented as proof. However, references to this publicly important information are blocked on the website. The new computer incident response capability was supposed to defend the freedom of speech online, but apparently it will take a while to get any response from it. The ministry made the decision about the capability only last week. All these issues will be resolved within a month because all procedures are being accepted at the government level. One of the authors of the Russian media law, Mikhail Fedotov, questions the intention of the new Kazakh authority to react to the violations of rights and freedoms of ordinary citizens online. In his opinion, this is another censorship body and another blow to the reputation of Kazakhstan.
There is a reduction of freedom space and the flow of information, and this contradicts the international obligations of Kazakhstan as a member of the United Nations and UNESCO. Once a country imposes restrictions on the free flow of information, it fails to fulfill the obligations.
In the age of high technologies, the attempts to set an iron curtain are doomed to failure, believes the Russian expert. Information from Mukhtar Ablyazov has already received too broad of a public resonance. Even after blocking the websites, people will not easily forget the demand to conduct an investigation of Kulibayev's activities.
On Wednesday evening, the president of Kazmunaygas Kayrgildi Kabuldin arrived in Zhanaozen. However, the striking oilfield workers refused to negotiate with him without Mukhtar Umbetov, the head of the region's independent trade union Aktau. The workers claimed that only he can be trusted to represent their demands.
According to the workers, the old trade union leadership can no longer represent their interests. Meanwhile, Kazmunaygas leadership doesn't recognize the new head of the union. The talks with the president of the company didn't produce any results, say the oilfield workers, and the administration of the enterprise didn't enter any new negotiations.